Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Monoxide Podcast. I'm your host, Harris, a.k.a. Monoxide, man of many automotive aspirations, and I'm here with my co-host, Mr. Gunnik Raj.
Yep, I'm here.
Today we are at Rada Race Lab. I keep adding labs at the end for some reason. But
yeah, we went back and forth on that when we were starting the business on exactly which one to go with. I was non-plural, he was plural, and it kind of bit us in the ass to a certain extent because everyone wants to put an S on the end of it.
Right.
It's just a weird thing that we had to deal with. We made our choice.
It was to the point where I think we were doing our LLC paperwork, and I screwed up, and I put it as labs, and then we got our paperwork back, but then all of our other stuff said lab on it, and then we were like, what the fuck?
We had to change it, yeah. That's the fun stuff of owning a business.
You're good. Yeah, you're past the first minute.
I just didn't know,
Oh, yeah, that's the thing.
Swearing and hands and...
So
but we are Rada Race Lab.
But so Rada stands for what? You said Razzle Dazzle? Is that officially it?
Ultimately, that's where it came from.
We can cut that.
No. That's the people need to know because it's such an oddball name. How did it come up? Rick, you want to tell the story? You want me to tell the story?
You go first.
So, back in our AMS days, I was fabricating a charge pipe for an Evo 8, and I had to make a bracket for it, but then I also had to make a bracket to hold something else. And after I made it, I was so proud of myself in front of Rick and a couple of other techs that I was like, razzle dazzle, I'm done. I went to go close the hood, and the hood just popped right back up because it got blocked by the bracket I made, and everybody kind of started laughing at me. So then they call me, razzle dazzle when everything kind of went to shit. And so...
And we start working together on the cars, the race cars and stuff. We ultimately worked really well together, so we kind of adopted that for our term, given the old razzle dazzle, and that's ultimately what the name stands for. It's shortened versions of that, but everyone thinks it's our initials, Ricky, Dom, and then some other stuff in between. So a lot of times we'll make it up. Ricky and Dom are awesome. That's our RADA or what have you. So
he's the razzle, I'm the dazzle.
Like shake and bake.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, got to get a big mural right here in the lobby. It just says Razzle Dazzle.
We've always had aspirations to do we want to do like a collage of just random pictures. He mentioned jet skis earlier. That's how we know we've made it as business owners, and we could buy some brand new jet skis. So we've always wanted to do a picture collage of like jet skis and dolphins and us with explosions behind us. So that's probably going to happen at some point.
We already have
our lifetime.
A really good pictures. We have that picture from the July 4th party.
Oh, yeah.
Just in our swimsuits with a hose and a three-wheeler. Don't ask. It's cool.
Yeah.
Once we make it, we'll share it, but it's pretty fun.
But okay, so you guys are no strangers to obviously doing fast car stuff. From your days at AMS to now, obviously doing a lot of stuff with DAZA. I saw a GTR in the back, just a little bit of everything. What's your main specialty? Is it the DAZA platform then?
Yeah, right now we are pretty focused on the 5-cylinder stuff. That's what our product line is geared towards. So we try to make everything for those cars that we see fit and see a necessity in the industry. We'll kind of not miss, or we like to do the eyeball stuff, like safety equipment is a really big one for us. So we like to develop fire extinguishers, fire systems, stuff like that. Intercooler that he developed, the big boy intercooler, we do a 1300 horsepower intercooler, which it takes some trimming and stuff with the car, and I think a lot of other people probably didn't see it feasible as a product because of that. But it's a necessity when these cars get to this high horsepower level. It's either air to water or something like that. So we like to slot in where we feel necessary, where other people don't, parachute kits, stuff like that. But yeah, our main focus is these 5-cylinder cars, where there's a lot of people doing it, but we feel that there's not a lot of people seriously doing it.
Mm-hmm. Well, and there's got to be the DAZA market's a weird one, right? Because you only have two cars, right? A TTRS and what's it called, the RS3, right? Whereas when you look at the B58, it's in literally every car in the BMW platforms. So do you find it difficult to make products for that market, or do you think you're getting enough market share with the stuff you're developing?
I think there's definitely enough to go around, especially when you look at us, who we're really about quality rather than the quantity and stuff like that. So I think there's always a market for that kind of aspect of it, where the higher end stuff, you're always going to find those customers and plenty of people to go around, and it works out for us that way.
Mhm.
the B58 stuff, S58 stuff. We looked into it. He was going to do a turbo kit for it, but as soon as those cars came out, there was already 4 to 5 people doing single turbos, big, tubular manifold turbo kits, stuff like that. So we can't compete in those markets because it kind of ends up being a race to the bottom where people are either undercutting each other, trying to get cheaper just to get that market share, and we don't like to compete in that because it kind of waters down what we're trying to do.
No, absolutely, 100% agree. You can't, because ultimately you want to sell more units when you get down to production and a value like that. You're trying to sell more units to make more money, but at the same time, who's going to pick your kit versus somebody else's kit if their kit is $100 cheaper? So now, the other company competing with that company is $100 cheaper. And so to kind of bring up exactly what Ricky was saying, it's a race to the bottom. And I kind of feel like that's already kind of happened to the GTR market. It's starting to happen to the Huracan market, DAZA market, kind of the same thing. We generally just stick to our own path of what we know works really well and the quality of our products. We take more time to build it and manufacture and make sure that it's the highest stuff you could essentially buy in the market right now. And everything's handmade. It's made in-house. Our whole fabrication team takes care of it, which is just me. So, but that's kind of the really cool thing about it is essentially I control what it is, what it looks like, how it leaves this facility instead of worrying about somebody else taking that initiative. Eventually, as a business owner, we do want to get to that point where we do have a production run where like I said earlier, that we do have a couple of guys knocking this stuff out. But at the same time, you start getting into the quantity over quality, and that's not what we're about. We're essentially about giving you the best possible thing you can get, and that's hands down, that's it.
The way I always look at it when I'm shopping for car parts and I look at big price differences on stuff, right? It's I always figure there's usually not gouging going on, right? So I'm like, why would this one be $1,500 cheaper? Where did the corners get cut? Right? Because somewhere it's either thinner metal or it was slammed together in a factory somewhere, and just so they can kick out thousands of kits.
Absolutely, yeah.
It's not cheaper for no reason.
Right, exactly. That's what I'm getting at. Like, there's a reason why.
And a lot of people assume it's just we and other shops that do charge a premium are just price gouging. They call it like a GTR tax or an R8 tax or whatever, and it's to a certain extent, I guess you can call that true because there are less of those cars, so the price point of entry is way higher. But you kind of have to pass that on through your product. So that's why that is. It's not gouging. Obviously there are some people out there that probably do that, but ultimately you got to make up for lower quantity on lower quantity cars with price, right? So,
especially to cover R&D for something like that. You had a car that they only import 1,000 of or something in the States. Your exhaust, if you make an exhaust for it, you need to get your hands on that car. You need to jig it up. You need to do a bunch of stuff and invest. Whereas you do make a product, the wrong person gets their hands on it, they jig it, then they send it overseas to get done for pennies on the dollar. So essentially that's the big battle with, I think, the whole industry as a whole. That's the big problem with it. There's less and less people that are taking initiative and building stuff in house, which from a business aspect makes sense because obviously you do want to make money. We're in this business, ultimately to provide for our families and buy wave runners. That's the goal. But we don't necessarily want anything to do with that aspect of making more money off a lesser product, if that makes any sense.
No, that makes sense.
So we're going to punish ourselves as much as we can to make sure you get a really good product and something that was built, by these hands and made to that kind of quality. A lot of our kits that we make a lot of power. So to have the right structure of all the parts and work that they're not going to vibrate apart or break welds or tacks because somebody forgot to wrap a bracket.
We're going to hide it behind some heat.
Yeah.
But the race to the bottom ultimately isn't a terrible thing. We get it. It's understandable. And I think, where our customer base is with guys like, Tyler with this TTRS, I think it's going to allow those customers to, kind of come out of the woodwork, the guys that are really, truly serious about racing and making their cars fast and, not I'm not saying all customers aren't quality because they're not that guy, but we love those customers that are truly, serious about it and want to push the
Invested in it,
platform
yeah.
and, help us do our thing while we help them do their thing, So that allows us to shine better, once all those, cheap turbo kits and cheap parts are on the market, that allows our, our race car stuff and our big dog stuff to shine through even more so,
So touch on that quality a little bit, right? So obviously when you're building a car of this caliber, which again, you guys are running low eights at this point?
Yeah, this car went 8.0. That's the fastest one we have. It's 4th in the world right now, but yeah, most of these street cars that we build are around 890s, 880s.
Which is nothing to scoff at either.
No.
Yeah.
Sounds
Full-weight
slow
cars,
nowadays,
yeah.
but
Yeah. But nonetheless, like obviously when you're trying to do that, especially at a reliable level, parts selection goes into it. So is there any particular like turbo brand you guys try to stick with?
yeah,
Garrett.
we're always been a
we've-
Garrett
okay.
company.
Always been Garrett. And for the sheer fact that we've seen the data, we've seen the testing when we did stuff while we were still at AMS, and the whole line of Garrett products that we've like with our own hands. I mean, we've seen it with our own eyes. We've seen the stuff on the dyno. We've seen what it does. And the biggest thing is Ricky's, you give props to precision. You love precision.
Oh, absolutely.
turbos,
There's turbos out there that make a ton of power. It's great. For what we're doing, Garrett just makes sense because they're an OEM turbo manufacturer, so you get that quality passed down through the performance stuff, right? So nothing against precision at all.
Well, they're doing some pretty awesome stuff too as well.
Right.
Right? Like
Oh, for
these
sure.
next gen turbos are
They're good.
Yeah,
I've
they're
heard good
making
things.
power and everything. For us, these motors, so the turbo sits behind them. They're pretty heavily packaged back behind that motor. A lot of
It's
heat,
hot back there.
stuff like that. So we like a water cooled
hot back
turbo
there.
in general. And that's kind of ultimately what it comes down to is just OEM quality, water cooling on the Garretts. Zona's great too. And Guy Rose uses Zona in his kit, so it's kind of one of those things as well.
Yeah, we can't come out with a kit running
Yeah.
Zonas and compete with Hanky, but we're really close with Hank too. So
It's hard to argue with because they are on a lot, like you said, OEM manufacturer,
Right.
right? A lot of diesel trucks.
Mhm.
I've got a truck with 250,000 miles on it running a Garrett turbo. It's been on there since it was built. I mean, you're talking turbos that have millions and millions of miles on
Right.
them collectively out there.
Yeah, it's hard to deny that
Right.
fact about that brand, and that's why we ultimately stick with them. And just the experience in the past with them, we've used them for a long time through our other, places of employment and stuff like that. So
Mhm.
Well, one thing that Aaron from Nth Moto brought up on episode 98 was talking about how Garrett provides like flow maps and all this stuff.
Yep.
Does that kind of help you guys in your selection as well?
to a certain extent, yeah, obviously it helps with turbo choicing, but a lot of times we're pretty well above that anyways. So
Okay.
well, it
it's,
varies. It varies.
when you see a shaft speed limit, most turbos really aren't making their full power.
Those are suggested maps.
Yeah, that's
They're
what I was gonna say.
suggested maps.
Yeah.
Let's be real. We
But it definitely helps too. I don't think Precision provides that. I don't think they ever have. It is what it is, right? You can always throw a turbo on a car and see if it works out to what you want it to do and
Mhm.
go that route with it. But there's so much data just in general on the internet and stuff. These days it's so accessible that you pretty much figure anything out with or without that stuff.
Do you guys do your own tuning?
Some of it, yes.
Okay.
So I'll tune like these cars if they're on Cyvex. I've been starting to tune those in house more so. Hank has tuned a couple for us, but recently, we're big supporter of the more that we can control, the better off a product's going to be, right?
As you should be, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So I've been taking some of that on as far as the 5-cylinder stuff. But yeah, anything else that comes in, I'm a big VR6 guy. I do a lot of VR6 B5 cars. And then we'll do like the random, like I'll tune a lot of Haltex here and then some Mega Squirt stuff. So yeah, there's a lot of it coming in, but for the most part, the factory ECU stuff, we sub out to a guy named Darren Dykara, Double D Tuning in Florida. He does really well. He tuned Tyler's car. He's tuned a couple of other stock ECU cars. And there's really no one better for that. I just don't have the time to learn a stock ECU right now. So
Right.
with
You're just
everything
know
else
enough
going
to be
on.
dangerous sort
Right.
of deal.
Yeah.
And then V10 stuff we'll usually have Jake Miles, Martin, guys from AMS, especially when it's a Motec car. They'll take care of that. And they work really good. Like
Yeah,
a
they
shop
figured that all
already is.
out. They have their their own strategies and everything for all that. So it's kind of like we speaking about before the actual podcast. How if we're not gonna, if we know that we can't do it perfect on your car the first time, we have to learn on your car. We're going to find someone else that knows it and knows the ins and outs of it already. That way you have a good experience. We have a good experience. And that's, for the V10 stuff, like Dom said, Motec and Martin and Jake and Miles over at AMS there's no one better than that. So,
well, it's awesome that you have that relationship. So I guess this is a question I've started asking more and more on the podcast. Sure. Who are some shops that you kind of respect or work with or just kind of want to give a shout out to? It doesn't necessarily be shops either, just products in general.
Ooh, I mean, we're close.
Who's your man crush?
Oh, my man crush, Tony Palo. If you're watching, he knows it. I know it. Tony at T1. That dude's. Whenever we used to meet up while we were still with AMS at the events, it was awesome. The dude's just a great all around dude. He's a dude's dude. You know what I'm saying? And he's very smart, and his whole team builds amazing stuff. Obviously. Martin and the guys at AMS, we're still really close with those guys. That's where we did our dynasty. That's where we ran sixes for the first time. Mm-hmm. We have a lot of good memories at AMS.
A lot of love for those guys. Learned a lot. Had a lot of fun. So
Hank, obviously, big shout out. Without him, we wouldn't have somebody to chase, I guess.
Yeah.
If we ever do get around to trying to go for a record.
Obviously, Nth, we talked about him earlier with you guys. They're great guys over there, and they're on top of their game as far as quality, which we respect a lot. They always do great stuff over there. So
Hefner in Florida, he's awesome. Shops are shops. Real recognizes real.
You do notice that a lot as well in this scene, by the way. You could tell who's on top.
You probably hear a lot of the same names all the time, right?
Yeah, T1 comes across everybody's list.
Yeah.
Even Aaron is tipping a hat to those guys over there. So it's...
How can you not?
I agree.
The group of guys that's over there between Terrence, Jackson, Wade, Tony, Mitch, all those guys.
That's my biggest thing with them, and what I look up to them the most about is they have such a tight-knit team over there that works so well together. And I think I asked at least one or two of their guys every time we see them, like, man, you guys just have it going for you. You guys seem like you enjoy what you do every single day, enjoy each other, have fun. And that's kind of what it's all about. It's hard to find that.
Imagine Fast and Furious, where they're at the end of the whole first one, they're all chilling in Dom's backyard, like drinking beers and hanging out. Like that's their whole crew. Like I'll see posts, I'll open stuff up. They're like, they're at a rave, like all of them on a Friday. So,
but that's the dream right there. So
there's definitely guys to look up to, and those would be them. There needs to be more shops like that, I feel like. And there's a lot of good shops, but there's a lot of shitty shops too.
And that's a part of it. I get this bad boy a little bit closer, by the way, on your end. So when it comes to being like serious, right? Like, where do you guys stand, right? Because there's a lot of people that go out there, just have a good time, just have a fun time. They want to build fast cars, right? You guys are over here trying to build from what it seems, a really serious operation, from production to just honestly innovating. And we can get into innovations here at some point as well. Is that kind of like what you're kind of gunning for, is to kind of be like the go-to in this platform or any in particular?
We just want our name, we tell everyone, is the most important thing to us. We feel if we preserve our name and our reputation, the money and the whatever business will come with that. So
the hundreds of dollars.
The hundreds of dollars. But
we're making the hundreds of dollars now. Hopefully we're making thousands of dollars. That's the goal, is to go from hundreds to thousands.
But that's the biggest thing for us, and ultimately that kind of transfers through to everything that we do. And it sounds cliche, but we're not going to do a product, we're not going to design a product, we're not going to fab a product if we know that it's not 110%. Like it's one of those things. And like I said, it is a little cliche, but yeah, that's ultimately our goal, is to not even just with this 5-cylinder platform, but eventually when we branch off into other platforms, our name being hand in hand with the high quality, most top tier stuff you can buy, and service as well, and customer service is a huge thing, as he mentioned earlier. But that first 4.9 star review is going to kill us.
Oh, fuck.
I noticed that when I was looking at some of these shops we're going to, they're all holding a 5-star review, by the way. It's
Oh, not everyone we've had on here.
well, not I'm just saying this trip down here.
Oh, yeah.
What would you say is your second biggest platform you guys are working on here?
That's tough, actually.
I mean, it's everything else other than the DAZA.
Yeah, I think the 5-cylinder stuff is, our production platform right now, but
GTR.
then pretty much anything that, kind of is in the realm of drag racing. Like we built a few Mustangs for our friends and some customers. We built some ZR1 Corvettes, stuff like that. So anyone that wants to, 8th mile, quarter mile race, that's kind of our next, focus right there, is just doing the quality work for those guys. Guys that have like true race cars that want a shop that can handle that. So.
Okay.
Do you do any road course stuff then?
We have, so there's a Evo 10 back here that Dom just did the cage in, a full FAA certified cage, if you want to touch on that car.
Yeah, so it's one of our friends. It's kind of been a long-term project. We started on that before we actually started the business. It started off just being small. My buddy wanted a turbo kit intercooler and just a harness bar, and then it kind of spiraled into a full FIA spec, rally cage, which I had to get certed for and do a bunch of stuff. So it's one of those things where there's no real rush. It's like whenever there's an opening or time to kind of continue working on it, we do. And then, we're almost at the finishing stages. Cage is in. I mean, motor's done, fabrication's done. It needs to get painted. He's got a really gnarly all carbon fiber front bumper with a lip, and obviously
Are we not going to acknowledge the fact that
small
it's cleared
wing.
for takeoff?
yeah, the small wing on the back.
Dude, that's the biggest wing I've seen in my life, and I've been around Vipers. Like,
Yeah.
that's massive.
Yeah,
So
we look
that's
at it
supposed to
now
be-
and we see it every day, so it kind of looks smaller, but yeah, it's huge.
No, that's SCCA Global Time Attack build. Eventually it'll get finished, and we can't wait because it's going to be a killer. So it's kind of a love project. You know what I mean? The majority of the time, do we do that? In terms of fabrication, whatever anybody brings here and they want quality stuff done, or they need me to fabricate something, whether it's a drag car, a road course car, a street car, whatever, I'll do it. Biggest thing though is obviously custom fabrication comes with a cost. It's not as simple as like, hey, I want you to build me an exhaust. Or we get the emails, I have car, how much for exhaust? And it's like, well, what kind of car? What kind of exhaust? What do you want it made out of? That's kind of the heartbreaker for a lot of people. They want custom cool stuff, but when you give them that sticker shock of, okay, well, I'm gonna estimate that this exhaust is gonna take 10 hours. 10 hours at $195 an hour, like right there, you could buy 6 exhausts for your car off eBay. Like, doesn't matter to you. Are you trying to shed weight? What are you doing? So,
That's a huge misconception, is that a lot of it's weird, and I think it's because we're in the industry, so we know. But I think a lot of people that aren't super into cars or super into this custom stuff, they assume that if someone's doing it, custom from scratch, that it's cheaper than a pre-made product, which we get it a lot. Like I said, to us it's crazy, but it's I guess it's more common than you'd think, and we have to explain to people that this is why it isn't that way. Like he said, if 10-hour exhaust, that's a pretty simple exhaust most of the time. In 10 hours, we charge straight labor for it. It is what it is. So plus material.
Start with downpipes and a tune. Then
Yeah,
go from
exactly,
there.
right.
Yeah, you want to get into go fast stuff. It's not a cheap endeavor. You have to enjoy lighting money on fire, and then you can get into this. But if the smile that it gives you when you hit that skinny pedal on the right is,
oh, for sure.
yeah.
You should start by not touching your car. You should just leave it alone. That's literally the number one.
I don't even, what you said doesn't make any sense to me. I have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah, that's impossible.
Yeah, right?
Oh, whatever, dude. You're 500 stock. You're like, I don't want to touch it. I enjoy it so much.
There is
For
a
now.
pile of parts sitting there at home. It's going under the knife this winter, so
Right.
I just bought more stuff. It just keeps collecting.
I'm so excited for that. That's going to be dude, it's going to be fun. How close is it going to be to, we're going to have our own.
What is it?
Oh, absolutely.
You say 500. What is it? Like
GT500.
Oh, GT500.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
the current gen, the S550.
Right, okay.
It's my goal is around 900 wheel. I'm not going like I don't want to go nuts with
Oh,
it.
you're not catching up to Mark. Okay.
No, I want it to still be reliable. I road course the car, so 1300 wheel isn't like, that's just dumb
Right.
for doing that kind of stuff. But
even 900 wheels, pretty
Yeah.
Let's
Pretty
touch
up
base
there
on
for that.
reliability and 900 horsepower.
I'm telling
How
you,
reliable?
pretty reliable.
Those, yeah, I mean, we built a couple, like, we did VMP blower
Oh, true.
S550s, and then
But we
Well,
should
the
touch.
Coyote is the GTR motor minus two or
Yeah, that's
plus
what
two
they're
cylinders,
saying,
right?
right?
Yeah, it's
So-
But yeah,
it's
let's
pretty
touch
good.
base on reliability and
Yeah.
high horsepower, because I think that's the biggest misconception
Yeah.
is a lot of people, they'll spend the money to make their car 1,000 horse, and they're like, oh, it's reliable, right? Is
Well,
1,000 horsepower reliable? Is it really though? Like, what's your term of reliability? Is it every red light to do launch control and launch out, or do back to back to back to back, highway pulls? Like, that's a very loose term. It'll be reliable if it sits in your garage and you take it out to, for a fun little run on a Sunday once in a blue
Right.
moon,
a lot of our customers will start the conversation by an email that they shot. I have an RS3. I want it 1,200 wheel horsepower. And our first email back is why,
yeah, wow.
And it's not saying that you don't need it, but a lot of people see, the highlight reels on the internet and the dyno sheets and the draggies and stuff like that. And they just say, I want that, without actually thinking what they're actually use the car for. So we're really goal oriented here. So then we, follow up with, so what exactly do you want out of the car? How are you going to use the car? This and that. And then we tailor builds to that specific usage. And a lot of times it comes in 300 or 400 horsepower less than they think they want, so, and 100% of the time they're happy at the end of the day, with that decision. They didn't spend a whole bunch of extra money for a number or what have you. And they truly enjoy the car. So,
Yeah, it's reliability at 4 figures, right at that mark or just around it, is not like it used to be. I mean, sure, if you're doing it in a Subaru, maybe not so reliable, but I mean, there's some platforms out there that are this S58, the DAZA stuff,
Yeah.
the Coyote stuff. I mean, it's pretty good, but yeah, people have to
very
understand that it's not.
it's still 1,000 horsepower,
Still,
and and
correct.
especially these cars, a small 2.5 liter, like it seems so easy to do, and ultimately it is pretty easy to make 1,000 horsepower in these cars, but still, it's 1,000 horsepower in an engine that, one bad day on an injector that is flowing 5 or 10% less for some reason or another, like that might end your motor.
I lost
it
a
is
pump
what
on
it
a dual
is.
pump setup.
Yeah,
Smoked a motor. So
Exactly.
yeah, it happens.
right.
With a $170 fuel pump,
Mhm.
took out a $10,000-$15,000 motor.
And that's ultimately what we deal with too. A lot of people offer warranties and guarantees and this and that. And it's so hard to do in this industry. Sure, you can try and do it. There's a lot of fine print involved in a lot of those. But when you're building a car, you're talking about thousands of components from sometimes, 50 different companies, 50 different suppliers, 50 different manufacturers. You're dealing with OEM, you're dealing with, fuel pump suppliers who are, partially OEM sometimes.
Yep.
If you want to really break it down, you're talking about your bolts out of your bolt bin in the shop. Like that makes a difference to some extent, stuff like that. So it's really hard to guarantee anything as far as making power or even not making power, a stock car, right? So
Guarantee is such a weird word.
yeah,
It
it's
is. And I
In the
didn't,
race car community, especially.
I didn't mean reliability as nothing's reliable. Sure,
Yeah.
you have, reliable for if you're somebody that's used to this, we're in the industry, or you have had a bunch of high horsepower cars, what reliable is, right?
Yeah.
To somebody new coming off the street, they want 1,000 horsepower car. It's a totally different thing. Whereas most people will, 1,300 horsepower, you can beat the shit out of this car. You can do whatever you want. It's going to be rock solid. That's bullshit, because the only platform I think is very close to that is the Goldilocks zone for GTRs is 1,300 horsepower.
but even then, even if we built a 1,200 wheel horsepower
Well,
GTR, I'm not going to tell the customer this thing is
no.
going to be perfect for the rest of your life. Like that's
Yeah,
it. It's just a
absolutely
dumb.
not.
You got to set expectations.
There's
Is what it
different
is.
platforms that will sustain that power level for longer, better. You can have a 1,200 horsepower DAZA that goes years, right? You can have a 1,200 horsepower DAZA that lasts 4 passes. But is that the fault of engine assembly, or is it fault of a OEM component that failed randomly because it slipped through the cracks of OEM manufacturers or whatever? So when somebody suggests that there's a full engine warranty, you have a package warranty, things of that nature, sure, their parts are covered, right? but not the labor to remove the engine.
Yeah, a lot
diagnose,
of times, yeah.
and then to reinstall the engine with all the machine components or everything you had to fix again. So the experience for a lot of the customers, it's hard to say that we've been almost like what are we? We've been like the second saving grace for a lot of people that had already been kind of screwed over by other companies.
We've played cleanup crew quite often. So
and that kind of stems from that misinformation of their customer. You know, you got a guy that's super overzealous to spend a ton of money. They'll sell him the moon and the stars, everything you can, without telling them or educating them of what this thing is and what to expect from it and what to prepare for and plan for. Like I said before, you put $100,000 into a build that's making 1,300 horsepower. Be prepared to have $30,000-$40,000 in a separate account for that year.
If you want to commission the car and race it and have fun with it, just in
case. If you're more
case.
aggressive on the street and you're doing digs and you're doing grudge racing or roll racing, like something can happen with the trans, something can happen with the drive shaft, axles. I mean, you name it, things are going to happen. And what sucks, and the hardest part is seeing somebody that saves up the money. They do the grind, they save up as much as they can, and they work so hard for this thing, and then something stupid happens. And now the car sits for a whole year in the garage because the guy can't afford to fix it. So now he's screwed. He can't fix it, and he can't sell it because it's not fixed.
Right.
Yeah. So, and it's the worst kind of story that we keep seeing over and over again in this industry with kind of how some companies are talking to their customers and how they're baiting people in to get these builds done and things of that nature. So we're I feel like we're 100% different from your traditional kind of speed shop is where
terrible businessman.
Terrible businessman. I mean, we don't like to take your money. Like that's a bad thing. Unless, you want to give it to us for wave runners, because then we'll fucking take it. Yeah. So but
yeah, we're just really goal oriented, like I said earlier, and a lot of times that means
wave runners.
Yeah.
That's the goal.
I'm going to buy an RS3. I'm going to put a hitch on it. I'm going to buy a wave runner. I'm going to hook it to the back. I'm going to drive it in here. And when it's 1,000 wheel, you can keep the wave runner.
Oh, totally.
Okay. Done.
Work?
All right. It's on camera right there.
But yeah, we're brutally honest sometimes. And a lot of times it hurts us, but I feel like hurting us isn't the customer doesn't appreciate it. It's just, we lost a sale because of it. We don't want to be those guys that, yeah, bring it in, let's do this, let's do that, let's do this. And then they get the car back and it breaks because, we oversold and underdelivered something that now they can't use, like he said. And it doesn't help anyone in that situation.
It's so harder to backpedal that too.
Right.
Or way harder.
It helps your bank account in the moment, but down the road, now he's not going to send his friends to you guys. He's not going to tell you his colleagues that, oh, I had a great experience with these guys. They were awesome to me. They really laid it out there for me. He's like, no, they just sold me a bunch of stuff and left me out to dry. Right. So that's another thing is, I'm sure you guys notice we're not really out there on social media and advertising. We don't do a ton of stuff with that. We try where we can, but we really like the organic growth from our customers, and so far it's working out well for us. We obviously could be making a lot more money and having a lot more customers if we did go out there and heavily market and do that sort of thing, but we don't want that because our name is, like I said before, the most important thing for us. So if we have people that are coming in and like, hey, I heard from my buddy that got his, X horsepower car built by you guys, that was the best experience of all time, and that's why I'm here. We love that. We love being friends with our customers. We love having the time where me and him can take an hour or two out of the day to hang out with a customer and chat with them or a potential customer and, just be there for them. And that's where we differ, I feel, from a lot of companies.
Just makes it that much more intimate when you have a referral from somebody you already did work for and became friends with. They come in and they're like, is this shop going to try to screw me over? And then you're looking at them like, is this customer going to try to kind of screw me over? And
it's like that Spider-Man meme.
Yeah,
everyone's pointing at each other.
Well, that's a whole tuning and tech and application thing too. Like the Spider-Man meme.
That comes down to the warranties.
Yeah.
Like, oh, it's your tuner.
But the natural
we see
kind
shops
of
play that sometimes too.
Yeah, that's the worst. It's tough.
Natural fluidity of kind of how we operate is good. It works for us. It works for our customers. What Ricky touched base on, we don't do any marketing. Like we'll make a post here and there on social media. What's really been cool is one of our customers, Stealth RS3. He's been nonstop, like just promoting the crap out of us and his car and his brand and everything. And that's brought awareness to, TikTok and a lot of people.
Yeah.
Which, a lot of people think you have somebody with a few million, views, followers, keep shouting you out, and you think that's going to translate to business. Whereas,
it never does.
Well, it's
it's
not
here
so
and
rare.
there, but it's not as much as you'd think.
I was
for
terrified at first when we were talking to Charlie, and he's like, "Oh, I'm going to blast everything." And I'm like, "Oh shit! Like, I don't want 100 phone calls every hour and people getting pissed that we can't bring their car in because it may just overload." But at the same time, social media influencers and things of that nature, a lot of the people that are watching his stuff, a lot of them are really, really big people in the RS3 stuff that they have the same cars, but a majority of them are people that don't own an RS3, don't work on RS3s, don't race RS3s, they're just watching it because of content, and that could always bring back bias towards what the relationship between social marketing and your actual business venue is. So it's awesome to get shot out and be out there, like he's doing the work for us. The guy is,
he's been great.
Charlie's awesome. His car's a total monster. He's been racing people on this, in Mexico and all that kind of stuff. So he puts in work.
He's in a good abuse tester for us.
Oh my God. Yeah. Arizona heat or Mexico heat at like 150.
I think I went to Texas with that really bad heat wave they had last year, like 120 something, like actual temperature. And he lives in Arizona for most of the time out of the year. So he's always driving the car when it's 100 and something degrees. And
that's a good test.
He loves the rolling anti-lag in that car and that whole thing. So
it's not good for us because we're sitting here shitting our pants every time we see a reel or something of him just doing rips, And
but that also comes down to like obviously he understands like if you're hitting anti-lag constantly, you're wearing components out.
Oh yeah, he's full understanding of that, definitely.
Well, the best is the bang and pop maps. We get emails and telephone calls like, bangs and pop tunes are not good for your car, so please, for the love of God, stop doing it to your poor car.
Oh, I've gotten quite a few million views about people saying, "Nuh-uh."
Yeah.
They're fine. What about my OEM car that pops and bangs? Well, actually, that's because of the transition and all that.
Right.
People don't understand that there's a reason that an OEM
a fuel
car
cut
has
that
it.
happens during shift, or it's not.
We're also, just being goal oriented, and we're not going to do anything that's even remotely bad for the car, right? So we'll get people
that's
that
not planned for, right?
Right.
Because drag racing is already horrible for the car.
Exactly.
1,300 horsepower isn't good for the engine either.
I guess we won't do anything that's bad for the car that has no benefit.
Unnecessary.
Right.
Sort of,
So we get emails all the time, or even like when we are tuning a car, like, oh, can we do a bangs and pops map? We're like, absolutely not. That's that's not us, unfortunately. We understand if you'd like to go somewhere else for that, but that's just not us. Sorry. So
we're not going to do unintentional wear on. Just
right.
It's cool. We get it. We're not hating. Yeah, I'm
completely understand.
I've been a total fuckboy myself, with giant with giant wings on GTRs and obnoxious stuff. Like I love it as much as the next guy. We just can't do it from a business perspective because we're just doing additional like damage to your car, and it's not something that's feasible. So
you ever build a car for a customer thinking, I'm going to see this on Copart in a month, smash into a guardrail?
Yeah.
Because that's the other thing people don't realize, too. You can drive a car around at stock form is pretty fast. But now you're going to start doubling the horsepower. You're in for a whole nother ball game. Even adding 200-300 horsepower, it's a different animal.
Luckily, these cars, a lot of the newer cars, these cars, GTRs, they do really well with power.
They drive themselves, man.
But,
come on.
I come from the Mustang world where you don't have.
You guys already have a bad rap.
Yeah, exactly.
No, that's not. That's the throttle delay with you guys. That's why you guys are the crowd killers, man. That's why I always see you're still in the.
Don't make up excuses.
Well, all right. Well,
we already know that Dodge in the takeover has already killed more crowds than any Mustang, so we're fine. If I see another guy holding a cell phone get booted into the crowd from the ass end of a freaking Challenger.
Well, sideshows, those are like I only watch those just to people get wrecked. Like that's the best part about it.
Dirty pleasure. It's a weird thing, but
it's just awesome watching someone turn into a flying starfish.
Yeah.
But it's the same thing that goes. Like you can't hate on. As stupid as it is, like those people, it gives them something to do. Like, sure, let's shut down a whole street and do fucking donuts and get hit by cars. But hell, it's better than doing worse shit, I guess.
Sometimes
I like watching it, especially when they get just that's Darwinism
like the dude
at its finest.
Exactly.
It's fucking awesome.
I saw that one recently. But yeah, like I said, these cars are, they handle speed pretty well. There has been a few guys where we built cars where it's like, oh, I've never driven anything over like 300 horsepower. And it's like, okay, this is going to be an experience for you, but it's never like worrisome,
Yeah.
I'm sure, like, and in their earlier days where, before they had the awesome traction control and Motec and stuff, like Vipers are not forgiving cars.
No, they're not.
No.
So when you start adding power to those, I'm sure they have more stories like with that. But yeah, we get off pretty easy on these cars, The worst thing that we have to worry about is making sure a lot of these guys like to do the small brakes on us that fit smaller wheels, bigger tires. So we have to make sure that they understand what that means. They're putting brakes that are designed for a Miata or a Honda Civic on a car that, they're small cars, but they still weigh 3,500 pounds, 3,400 pounds. It's a lot of weight for a brake like that. So,
well, especially when you're talking about smaller brakes, like for example, our buddy Caleb, who's selling his ZR1, actually probably right now, he went to a smaller kit, whatever. The car made like 1,100 or whatever, and he's like, I could probably do only 2 hits in Mexico.
Yeah,
and then it's like, all right, we gotta let these things cool off a little bit.
Exactly,
they're just such tiny brakes.
So ultimately, we had a car that we built with. So this is where we come in, like with our development and our parts. What we deem as necessary, right? So we had a car that there's already small brake kits out for these cars. There's a few of them. We installed one of the off the shelf kits. We're really good about checking parts normally, as anyone should be. Because even if it says it comes with one thing and it's probably wrong or it might be wrong, just always check it, especially brakes. So we got provided a kit that was for the car and everything. They had the complete lower end of the spectrum as far as pads sent with that kit at one point. So I went and I was doing some testing in a car and got into the brakes after like 140 pull or whatever, got into the brakes and the pads literally melted off the backing immediately. Brakes. And that was the biggest oh shit moment I've had in my life. I actually had on the racetrack, I didn't go through 2 cars on a 2-lane, I would just did one of these, close my eyes and
close your eyes.
I went to pull the parachute. The pin was still in it, unfortunately, because it was on the street. And so ultimately that led us, I don't know if you can see it on our race car over there, as a small carbon setup. That was something we designed out of pure necessity for safety of our customers. If they want a small brake kit, we tell them this is very expensive, but that will not fade. That will get better with heat, and you're not gonna, have one of those moments if you really need your brakes. So
yeah, and that's another product we make all the hundreds of dollars on.
Yeah,
welcome back,
all the tens of dollars on actually on the brake kit. It's like tens of dollars, right? We're more focused on providing that for our guys that want to run that rather than kind of making money.
Yeah,
off it.
we'll break even. That's an expensive kit, It's a small brake kit.
Well, you'd rather see them have brakes than go over the price, right?
So anytime we sold that kit, it's been at cost, and we're happy to do it just because we know that we're solving that problem and could possibly save someone's life at that point.
Right.
So
the safety aspect on even when we do custom fab for cages, things of that nature. Like we have an R8 here, the blue one you guys saw in the back. That's getting a full cage, and that car's probably going to be around 2,700 horsepower. So from my point of view, safety is paramount, especially because I'm the guy building it, designing it. And at the end of the day, if something ever happens to that car or the guy inside the car, I have to live with that. So I think any one of our products that have to do with safety, our brakes, our fire suppression, our parachute kit.
Anything really we do is always safety minded.
There's always safety. Even our kits, the amount of power they make and things of that nature. At the end of the day, if the person loses control, something terrible happens, of course, it's something that we don't want to think about, but
it is part of the game.
It is.
It's customer retention. You need them to, when they wreck it, you need them to come back and build another one.
No, we're not a body shop.
No, that's horrible.
Yeah.
Generally, if you break your car, the turnaround for the customer to come back and do it is great, right?
Yeah.
You get to do it all over again. But at the same time, that's how I said we're not your typical kind of shop, or we look forward to that kind of stuff. Once we do a build, like a full build, I don't want to see that car ever again because of something or an issue.
Yeah, unless they're like, I'm having so much fun with this, I want more power. We want to go to the next level. That's great, obviously. So.
Or for service and maintenance when they bring the car back. I don't think we've had cars come back because of issues with kits and things of that nature. No. Unless they come back with another car, which has happened a couple times. They're like, all right, cool. Well, you built this one, now build this one. And we're like, awesome. That's a whole new challenge, whole new project, different platform, everything like that. My biggest itch right now is obviously I've been fiending to, ever since we ran 6s in Giddy's car, I've been chasing that high. So I really want to build a fast GTR. The problem is to build something and that's capable. you have to find the right clientele. Obviously, somebody that understands the game and knows how much money that it takes to build a car like that. But
yeah, that's tough trying to tell someone, hey, the build itself's going to be,
like
$400,000 to build a car that's capable of this.
And then to campaign it.
Yeah, and then on top of that, you need a
Two
trailer.
engines, 3 engines.
You need a trailer that has, two,
trances.
3 of everything. If you really want to be competitive and commission the car consistently, not saying that something's going to happen every time you go out with it, but if something does happen, you don't want to be waiting.
Expect it to.
You don't want to be waiting 3-4 months for your motor to get repaired, and you want to have that thing back in and ready to go the next week for the next race. So it's a tough pill to swallow for a lot of people that don't understand that right off the bat. So it's really hard to find someone that does and truly understands that you're just throwing away money at that point. There's no benefit monetarily. There's no benefit at all, aside from you having fun maybe. And even then you might not have fun with it. So
Yeah. Do you guys do machine work for engines in house, or do you assemble engines in house? What do you?
So we have one engine guy that we have worked with a long time. His name's Scott at St. Charles Garage locally here. He actually was at AMS with us back when we were doing the GTR stuff. He ran the engine program there, so ultimately it was an easy transition for us to use him. He does all of our big dog motors, so our sleeve stuff, our CNC head stuff, anything that's 1,000+ horsepower. Any of what we call like our stage 1 motor, which is pistons, rods, studs, stuff like that, we'll do here.
Okay.
So,
oh no, they used the word stage. Oh my god, the internet's on fire.
Yeah,
that's a German thing, right?
That's how the Audi community likes to do a lot of things.
Stage 1 motor, 8.0.
Oh, that's funny because that one was pistons, rods, stock size head studs, stock head, completely stock head motor that went 8.0.
We tried to kill it.
Yeah, we tried to kill it at the track last year at the end of the season. So now we get calls, I want Tyler's old setup like exactly the same as it was. We're like, absolutely not. You can't have that because it's not going to last. It's not sustainable in a car, right? So, but that's a funny one.
So it's still doing all right then?
The motor was still alive. I mean, we cracked three of the cylinder walls the last outing, but actually it was.
Well, back up. Say the full story because I think people need to understand the gravity of
it. Still runs. It's
how this car.
Yeah, let's go over
on 3 cracked.
Well, let's go over Tyler real quick in general as our customer. So he came in the first year we were in business, and he started off as wanting just a basic what they call hybrid build. Your standard stock manifold. Hogged out housing, throw a turbo in it. Bob's your uncle, so he wanted that, and then I think it was like. You're already done with the motor, which was just pistons, rods, off the shelf stuff, studs. And he's like, oh, I'd rather just go full frame right off the bat, a big turbo kit. So we sold him our, at the time, our R900, which is a G35 900 kit, Garrett turbo. And, they're pretty quick cars at that level. But I think it was the day that we got it running with everything in the car. He's like, all right, I'm going to come pick it up. I'm like, Tyler, like we never do it like this. Like we normally drive a car for a week or two, put 200-300 miles on it at the very least.
Log, make sure everything's good, healthy.
Yeah, he's
happy.
like, I'm on my way. We're like, okay, well, I think I got 2.5 miles on the car. Completely, the build was done for 2.5 miles. That was it. He came, picked it up.
Because he had a grudge race that
yeah,
day.
I think he's a big.
Let me remind you, it wasn't just to come pick it up to go screw around. Yeah. He legit either that night or the next night.
Yeah, he's like, I need to do some testing tonight. So he went out, did some testing, and that's when we knew that the rest was history with Tyler. He's our people, So he picked up the car, and I reiterated 10, 20 times. I'm like, man, we're good at what we do, but we usually like to see this through for at least a few more miles than this. He's like, I get it, man. He's like. Anything that happens, it's not going to be on you. He's like, I know I put this on you guys really hard. So he did that. And I think that season he won 23 races and lost 0 in that car. Wow. And he's out there he's one of those guys that's out there every weekend doing the thing. So he's been really good for us testing wise and seeing what our turbo kits can do. So that end of that season, he went up to our 1050 kit, which is not much of a bigger turbo. It's, G35 1050. So this is ultimately, we used to offer the 900 kit. We got rid of that off our menu because the 1050 and 900 spool similarly. The 1050 makes more power. So we just kind of just absorbed that into the 1050 kit. So he went out and pretty much the same story the next year. He I think at the end of the year, because he draggies every pass he does, I think at the end of that season, he had 200 and something passes on the car that season.
So what's the maintenance look like at that level then?
For Tyler?
For 200 passes. For Tyler.
I don't know. We didn't see him for a year. So it's like he did oil changes and that was about it. I think he came back. We put our rear drag strut kit on it just to help out with some of the launches and stuff. But this car we call it the unicorn. It's been absolutely rock solid ever since. And then, after that season, again, he came back and put our 1150 kit on it, which you saw upstairs, that one that's on the motor mocked up. So he put that kit on it, and that year was, this car was fast that year. And that was last year. It was consistently doing like 850s, 860s on the street on an 18-inch tire. 60 to 130 was in the low threes. It was just a car that no one wanted to race at this point. So now he's racing 275 guys, that are absolutely destroying him. So he actually lost a lot of races with a faster car.
Every single race. Just because nobody in his weight class would want to, do it anymore. So he's out of his weight class trying to race these guys. And plus, the biggest problem I think is he was giving guys the hit
because no one would race him. So he just wanted to race at that point. He wanted to go out there and have fun with the car, and to do that, he had to start giving concessions to people.
But you're in a DCT car. You're already giving the fucking
hit
to everybody that's on a trans brake.
And he was racing some serious cars, they weren't slow cars. So yeah, he ultimately lost a lot of races that year. And it makes sense, right? But he was, by the end of the year, we were pushing the car at 50, 52 pounds on the street, a boost. And this was on, a lot of times on pump ethanol, like stuff you shouldn't be doing, right? And we're like, this thing will just not die. So at the end of the year last year, the car was full interior the whole time. AC was full weight completely. There was nothing taken out of the car aside from small brakes. And he had a dump on it instead of an exhaust. So at the end of the year, we're like, Tyler, it's, I don't think it's going to last another season like this. I'm like, do you want to try and kill it at the track, right? So he was like, yeah, absolutely. So we didn't take a ton of weight out of it. We took the rear interior out of it. We took a couple of small things like the wipers and stuff. But the car's, it's still fairly heavy. Still had AC. It's still had front interior. Still, I had one seat in it, had a race seat in it, but we did that. We asked the tuner, Darren, we're like, hey man, we want this thing as much as the turbo will do, man. Just, we know it's probably not doing it any good, but as much as the turbo will do. And then we're like, we're going to throw a small shot of nitrous on it too. So we did that.
What's a small shot?
It was actually pretty small to start.
Was it 50?
We started with a 50. Yeah.
Itty bitty then.
Little guy.
So yeah, we got that all set up, and the day before we were going to go to the track, I was testing the wide open throttle nitrous, relay box, because we have to use it in the stock ECU. It doesn't have, native nitrous control, obviously. So we went through 2 boxes off the shelf, and they were both bad out of the box. So don't trust parts, I guess, even if you think you should, always test them. So by the end of the day, I'm like, screw it. I'm going to put this thing on a button. I just had it on a button. I had this button, and it wasn't even like an actual button. It was like the old school wide open throttle switch that has like the long lever on it.
Little micro switch.
I had that taped to the steering wheel, And Darren, the tuner, he's like, man, that's a bad idea. He's like, don't hold this thing through the shifts and stuff like that. I'm like, yeah, okay. So ultimately, the car went fast without nitrous. I think we were in the 820s. I think we got in the 18s a couple times at 107. I think it was 171, 172. And then, I'm like, screw it, let's just start spraying it. So then I think we did 4 or 5 low 8.1s. And then I'm like, man, this thing just keeps chugging along, right? And Darren's like, oh, where are the logs at? By that time, my laptop had ended up in the trunk of the car because I just had it sitting on the floorboard. So I'm like, screw it, I'm not even taking logs anymore. We're trying to kill this car. And finally, I think it was nearing the end of the day, we were just trying to better the ET, and we were having issues with the car would hit pretty hard, and it would the front tires actually pop off the ground a little bit, and then the front tires would start chattering. So we were having issues with that, just suspension limitations. So we're trying to deal with that all day. And then I think it was the last pass of the day or last couple of passes, it started smoking a little bit. So I'm
finally,
yeah, we're like, okay, something's going on. So by the one time I drove it down the return road, came back, we had it in the pits just sitting. I went to start it, and the car just started billowing white smoke. I'm like, okay, we either, screwed up a head gasket or cracked the boards. Cracking the boards is the most likely thing because now you're shutting the car off. The coolant's actually pushing into the cylinders after you shut the car off. So we're like, oh, we'll try, do one more pass, whatever.
Before we get too far into the show, I wanted to take a moment to talk about Raise a Hood. If your daily driver is having issues, aka your beater you got off Craigslist, Raise a Hood's telemechanics and AI tools can help you diagnose and solve the issues you may be dealing with for a fraction of the cost. All you have to do is add your car to the Raise a Hood garage to get started. You can provide the AI tool, also known as Gus, with the specifics of the issues you're having, and it'll help you narrow down what the culprit is. It's a great way to bounce ideas off of to figure out what actually might be the problem. You could then select from a variety of solutions to explore the cost and difficulty of doing the repair yourself versus taking it to a shop. If your car doesn't have detailed solutions yet, that's totally fine. Just go ahead and add your car to the garage for free, and that'll let the Raise a Hood team know what to focus on as they continue to develop and grow. If you want to try out Gus or chat with a telemechanic, go to raiseahood.com and add your car to the garage to get started. Use code MONOXIDE-FREE for a 1-month free subscription or Monoxide20 to save 20% on a 30-minute call with a telemechanic. Let's get back to the show.
A lot of you guys know Ratified Motorsport for their RS3, TTRS, 1,000 horsepower hairdresser car builds, but they are so much more than that. From basic maintenance on an R35 GTR to, cute little Volkswagen GTIs like mine, they're able to do a little bit of everything. Whether it's your basic maintenance or an intake and a tune or even a full-blown build, be sure to go to ratifiedmotorsport.com to get yourself booked today, and I hope to see you guys at the shop.
So, yeah, ultimately we found out that we did hurt the motor. I say kind of loosely. Sure, yeah. But
yeah, you fucking cracked.
Well, what
cylinders.
we did, we cracked 3 of the cylinder bores. What we ended up doing is we just learned to take the coolant pressure or the coolant cap off after every run, so it wouldn't bleed the coolant into the cylinders, and then it would be fine for another pass. So we just kept doing it. And then it just got really bad to where the track was like, "Hey guys, like it's smoking really bad
done.
after you pull the chute and everything." And they're like, "You probably shouldn't run it anymore." I'm like, "It's just water, man. It's spitting up a little bit out of the overflow. It's not a big deal, And it ultimately was just water. We wouldn't put coolant in the car or anything like that. So we ended that for the day. And I'm like, we're done for the season, but we were so close. We're just like, oh, shit. So we got back to the track, and that night I'm like, they do make head gasket sealer, right? So
yeah,
I got it back. I'm like, the car actually, runs, drives well still. It's idling. It pulls itself off the trailer. There's really no ill effects to this other than it smokes like a bitch. But it's, so I got back to the shop. I looked it over. I did some other things, and then poured some head gasket sealer in it and went back the next day.
Like just some O'Reilly's.
Yeah, it was some stuff that we got from Napa or something.
Yeah.
And that slowed it down. It didn't completely stop, the smoke, but the track was happier with that, right? It was a slow day at the track. It was October 30th.
Yeah, it was
Something
cold
like
out.
that. So, yeah, we ended up doing a couple more passes, and then the one pass, like I came around the pit lane and everyone was standing there. I'm like, oh shit. I'm like, we must have went faster than 8.1 or whatever, like low 8.1s, 8.10 or something. And then everyone's like, this close, and I'm like, oh shit. I look at the slip, it was 8.0, 175. So I'm like, this car has it in it, Unfortunately, it started like drizzling at the track right after that. The track shut down, and then the next day we got 6 inches of snow in October. It was like November 1st or something, so he couldn't go back with the car.
Yeah, he was down to
I was down to go
put
again.
more of that freaking head gasket sealer in and fucking let her eat, dude.
I think we were only on like a 75 shot. The car picked up 2-3 mile an hour from that, but it wasn't like anything crazy. But yeah, it was right after launch, sit on the button and stay there until the end of the track. And it was ultimately alive when we got it back. No bent rods, pistons were in great shape. Like I said, it was a stock head car. We were revving at 9,000 RPM, like stock porting, nothing out of the ordinary as far as a base model build goes, but this car has just had the absolute snot beat out of it for the past 3 years.
And it just keeps taking it.
Yeah. And it would have taken more, but we had to call it when the snow hit, and now he's got a bad dog race motor in it, so he's getting a little upgrade.
Just a little upgrade.
Okay, noted. Well, so who holds the record currently then?
Hank
Iros, yeah.
Okay.
He has
Hinky.
two, maybe 3 cars now in the 7s. So
Oh, wow, okay.
He's got the blue car,
his car, Jeff's car.
Jeff's car.
Did Pat's car go 7s? I don't know, but I know he has 2 or 3 cars that are like 7, 9, X.
Okay.
And then there's a car in Europe from Rada Racing. They have a TTRS that's pretty race car, and I think they went 7.9s as well. So I think we're 4 or 5.
We're number 4 on the list, right?
So what's the methodology, right? Like, because like every shop has their own approach, right? What is it that they're doing well, and where's somewhere where you're thinking like, all right, we might have a shot here? Are you chasing the record at some point?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Sure, everybody is, right?
Yeah.
I mean, well,
We'd like to chase it harder. It's just like I think we touched on earlier that our customer builds are of most importance to us right now. So it's hard to justify spending a ton of money to do track outings to break a record, right? When we're busy enough and we're trying to appease our customers. But obviously, it pays off for a shop to break the records if you can do it properly without sacrificing, quality and support of your customers or relationships, right? So, we're definitely chasing it. Like I said, we'd love to be able to be in the position where we could chase it every weekend, but we just can't.
Oh, physically can't. We don't have the manpower either.
Yeah,
because there's 4 of us in the shop. Number 1, So
what you need is a customer to come in and go, I want the record.
Right.
I mean, that's for the most part. I feel like that's the majority of shops, unless you're a shop that's raking in hundreds of thousands of dollars each month, where you can physically hire guys or have guys on payroll to support a shop race car and go out every weekend. So and that's the biggest dilemma too. Is people have dreams and aspirations. You could be a privateer kind of guy that's not a billionaire or millionaire and go for a record. You're just going to have a harder time. You're going to have to do a lot more sacrifices versus some of these guys that come in and do carte blanche, like, here, Dom, Rick, here's $500,000. I want to go 7s in a DAZA. We're going to be like, okay, well, with that kind of money, we can hire another guy or somebody to head up a project of that magnitude, and that be the main focus. That, like, we are strictly focusing on chassis of the car, lightening it as much as we can, building, fabrication, things of that nature, building an actual drag car, utilizing aero technology, things of that nature that we could utilize, and then you proceed to kind of move that in that direction. But as far as a regular company, it's unless somebody's hard on to do that as a customer, there's
a hard sell.
It's a hard sell too. It's
because every time you go to the track, even if you're going to a local track, right, like, it's going to be a $1,500 endeavor. When you talk about fuel, paying someone to be there, at least $1,500. Even transporting the car, like, sure, if you have your own trailer and stuff, it's great, but it's still, $100, $150 to do it yourself, right? So a lot of people don't take that into account. But to touch base on what you asked about, what do we think that we excel in as far as doing this versus other people, I think we look more into the small details, chassis setup, suspension, how things are actually working, where a lot of people focus more on power and the peak power and the trap speed, stuff like that. So I think you'll find that a lot of our cars will tend to go a little bit faster on lower trap speeds, and I like that aspect of it, because that means you're putting some thought and engineering and time into actually sorting the chassis of the car. So we like to do a lot of that stuff. We do a lot of suspension development, custom stuff that you can't buy off the shelf, and it'll pay off eventually. I go back to the small brake kit. Safety was one of the main concerns with that, but like, that whole kit is 7 pounds a side. Rotors, pads, brackets, hardware, lines is 7 pounds. So that's a huge thing for the car.
Is what, like 60 for both?
Yeah,
it's like 30.
It's like 40 something pounds a side, I thought.
So right there, just
But
rotating mass and
stuff like that, taking weight out of the right spots of the car. A lot of people think like, oh, get as light as possible, it's going to work better. No, it's not the case. You have to take it out in proper areas. You got to see how the car works. So we do a lot of that development and testing, and it takes a lot longer. But that's something I think we're proud of as far as a shop. So.
Well, I don't know. You had mentioned that you like to have them for a while and drive around a little bit. I don't know any other shops that are wanting to try and put a couple 100 miles on a car just to make sure it's working right.
I don't feel comfortable unless, after power's made and everything, if we don't put at least 200 miles on a car.
Yeah.
Like, put it up in the air 3-4 times during that. We'll periodic, because these, you don't have to cut an oil filter open. You just take the cup off. We can periodically check the oil filters regularly through that 200 miles and just make sure everything's looking good for our customers. So we don't want to ever, because if we rush something out the door and in the back of our heads, we know that we didn't do our due diligence on that. Like, I'm going to stay up at night. I'm not going to feel good about it. So if I don't feel good about it, like, that's going to translate into, I don't know if you believe in karma or bad luck. Like, I feel like that'll translate down the road to that. So
I build my own stuff sometimes, and I lay at night, or you're driving the car around. You're like, what was that noise?
right.
What was that noise? Was that there before? You hit a little vibration somewhere. I was like, is that the road?
Right.
Yeah. No, it's very nerve-wracking.
Especially when you change something, and it's you're now hyper focused on that. And
yeah.
so I like to, especially like if we know a car is going to have some nuances or make a little bit of noise here, and you do some suspension stuff on it, or you do an aggressive clutch setup that drives really well, but it does have some things, right? I can at least relay to the customer like, hey, this is all normal. I drove your car for X amount of miles, and I know these cars well. So that gives them peace of mind. So they're not calling me at 2 a.m. like, hey, it did this. I can already explain to them what it's going to do.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I like to do that as well.
Where does that ideology come from, especially when it comes to like doing the setups of the cars? I mean, it sounds like you have a lot of experience to call on.
Yeah, that comes from as we said before, that's AMS. Hats off to them always. We appreciate everything that we did there. Learned so much. So a lot of that stuff comes from that. They are very, very Martin especially is very, very engineer oriented, and
he's a nerd. Martin's the biggest nerd we know.
He'll never just guess at something. It's always like, we need to do the testing, we need to do the data, we need to figure this out so we can make sense of it. So it all comes from that. When we were doing all that stuff with Giddy's car and some of the other cars, it was just developing suspension is one of the hardest things you can do. A lot of people take it for granted. It's kind of suspension is as important as your tuner, right? You need to have a good setup, a good chassis. You need to have a good car to handle the power you're throwing at it, else it's not going to do what it's supposed to. So he beat that into our heads over and over and over again.
You're talking about a guy that would literally, I would fabricate a tube, right? Or I would make charge pipes for one of the crazy GTRs. This dude would finger the tube, the flange. He'd stick his fingers in there and feel if there was a lip or if there was no lip or if it was totally smooth, and seeing him do that kind of stuff and stay on top of me about that, that's when I'm like, all right, this isn't just for looks. Like, this isn't just for like weld porn. Like, this is legit. Like, the inside needs to look just like the outside, right? Because there's resistance in a tube.
And what helped is the results that came from that. If you're at a shop that pushed that all the time, but they never went fast or never, won races and stuff like that, it'd be one thing. You'd kind of take that for granted. But because they were so in depth with all that stuff, the results show, through and through with them. And that's ultimately, I think, kind of a lot of the reason why we are the way we are with our stuff. So
well, it was a 6 too. I mean, that experience and the fight, the struggle that we essentially had to live through and deal with for that whole year and a half. A lot of people don't get to experience exactly what it is to chase a record of that kind of magnitude.
But with the car that's making 2,000 plus horsepower, and there's a lot of stuff that goes into it, and people just don't see the full ins and outs of it. So it looks like a lot of fun for a lot of people, but it's serious, man. It's serious work. It's serious thought. It's everything. I mean, you guys know it's a job.
Imagine building something that you're super happy and excited about that it's going to finally do, and then it all just goes to shit the next week, and you have to rebuild a new cooling system in the back or a new radiator. It's debilitating at times, but very awesome too. So a lot of that pedigree kind of came from us working together with all these kind of big power cars, and especially being lucky enough to experience Martin and all his kind of grand wisdom of engineering, and just kind of knocking into us like, you guys need to look at the bigger scope of aero, fluid dynamics, Venturi effects. How is this going to react with where the wastegate is on here versus right here, or where the blow-off valves are going, or the diameter of tubing, or
you're just giving away the entire keys to the kingdom here.
It's like, well, no,
it's just everyone can make 1,000 horsepower car, right? It's easy nowadays. Everyone can just be like, all right, it made a ton of power, it's going to go fast, and
cams nitrous 5.0.
Sure.
There you go. Right?
It might go fast, but you're not going to be in the upper echelon of that platform unless you put in the work.
It's no longer an enthusiast thing at that point, right? So we've done this walking through the pits at Texas 2K. Nobody's sitting in a lawn chair, just hanging out,
they're
waiting for the
fucking
next
working.
run.
Yeah.
There's
Working.
computers out. There's cars on jack stands. There's transmissions laying on the ground. Cars are getting tore apart, put back together,
Yeah.
things swapped out. There's oil everywhere. It's just a
Especially in the
scram.
RX-7 camps.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Well, that's
So,
the
yeah.
thing. You have all these guys that all year, whether they have their own companies or they're just entrepreneur or whatever,
We're losing you.
they build these. Oh, am I
We're losing you.
Let's just
The chairs
tape
are
this to
sending
my
you off
face.
into
Just
the
trailing
distance.
off.
You essentially have all these guys that throughout the year they build a car, right? Or on the side they build the car of their business. You know, they get to TXUK and like everything has to align perfectly, and it's such a stressful environment because like your trans goes out first qualifying pass. You have one more day to fix your shit and go out there and qualify for your class, or you're out. So it's cool to see that, and at the same time, it's heartbreaking too because you have a lot of people that put a lot of love into these cars, and you know maybe not the most kind of foresight for a couple of things they do to oversee what's going to happen when the car's actually on a sticky track and you're trying to throw 1,000 horse at it. But that's the coolest thing about the whole thing is you get to wrench on your own shit and you learn from those mistakes. So the next year these people come back out and now they have more experience. They know what they're doing. You know, and they could run these cars.
That's why I think that's why we gravitate towards drag racing a lot too. Everyone, you know, you're gonna get the guys that, oh, road racing is way harder, you know. And sure, at an entry level, road racing is quite a bit harder, you know, to get into. I found that going to, you know, a road course track, it's a pretty big production just to even race on a road course track. Drag racing is super accessible, and up to a certain extent, it's pretty easy, right? I'm talking, you know, maybe nines nowadays. You can call it easy to go nines in a car, but when you're talking like 8.0 versus 780 in a car like this, that's a lot. That's a lot. It takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of dedication. It takes a lot of, you know, you got to be a glutton for punishment because it's not fun. I mean, I shouldn't say it's not fun, but it gets to a point to where now you're actually in it and you're doing work, your actual work. You're not just smiling and like, oh, let's throw some more boost at it. It's not that. It's so when you get to
harder.
Yeah, exactly. When you get to that level, it's so interesting how much work is involved and how much time and just thought is involved in just shaving hundredths sometimes off of time.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't understand that portion of drag racing. They just say, oh, you're, you know, Florida and go, you know, whatever. It's not that at all when you get to the higher levels.
A tenth of a second and 2 miles an hour, you're like, yes.
And for guys like us that are just ultimately striving to do better all the time, that's so irking to not be able to just go a tenth faster. It's easy, right?
It's easy, dude.
Like, it's not easy. A lot of people don't understand it. You know, they see cars go 8.3 and they're like, oh, that car's got a 7 in it, no problem. And it's like, no.
Dude,
These cars have been out for 5 years now. 5 years? Yeah, 5 years, and there's still only 4 in the 7s. And it's like there's thousands of them modded at this point. It's like, so that's why we gravitate towards it. Not saying that, and I'm not shitting on road course cars or road racing at all.
I'm gonna cut out that exact
crazy
5
respect.
seconds and put it as a highlight just to make sure that they're like, oh, this fucking guy.
Yeah,
Oh,
no,
I hope
it's
that the fingering the charge pipe is going to be a highlight too, right? Like that's definitely going to be one.
absolutely. It's
All
like,
right,
just take all the weird things
yeah,
out.
you got
and-
to finger the charge pipes. I mean, that's and I still do that. I still stick my fingers and I finger all my charge pipes. Like normal. If you don't finger
Thank
your
you,
charge
Lord,
pipe,
for this highlight. No, kidding.
it's totally weird.
Is there between the TTRS and the RS3? Do you have a preference one either way? Are they different in their own?
TTRS.
Yeah, we
Right, or-
like the TTRS just because it is a better starting point, right? But the
The RS3 is a fucking shoebox with wheels. Like,
But the RS,
Yeah.
it's funny
There's
because
no
the
arrow
RS3,
about
three of the top 4
Right.
cars right now are RS3s, which is a funny kind of thing. You automatically, I think it's like a 300-pound weight difference off the bat with the TTRS. So it's a 2-seater, you know, it's more geared towards racing. It's not a 4-door. But, you know, when you get down to it, when you're talking about the speeds that they're going, it's kind of negligible on a street car.
Yeah.
Speaking of street cars in Mexico, so these things are doing, again, draggy, some pretty gnarly 60 to 130s.
Right.
They're doing like mid 3s.
So we
low threes.
just shipped one yesterday that went like 367, 60 to 130. It was like 2,700 foot DA. And that was a full weight RS3, stock front seats,
Holy shit.
full exhaust, 18-inch wheels. Same kit as this car. This car at the track on a slick did a 274, which is quick. It's up there. That one that you saw in back, that car did like a 279 last week, or 379, sorry, last week. And that's another full weight, 18-inch wheel street car. So yeah, they generally hover in the mid to high threes for, you're right, 1,000, 1,100 horsepower. That's pretty common.
People don't understand just how quick that is, right? Like I've been in, 6 second, I've even been in a 3 flat car before,
Right.
and it's ridiculous. Like and to think that you're able to do that with arguably, it is a lot of horsepower, but also it's not a ton.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? To be able to click off a 3.6, a 3.7.
That's what's great about these cars in the street. They just usually work every time. Like there's not much fuss with them even at high horsepower. So that's why you'll see them like win a lot of these grudge races, these 8th mile grudge races on some of the lower horsepower car, classes.
But they're not letting them in anymore. Like grudge races,
it's kind of always been all-wheel drive. But
all-wheel drive is never grudge guys, especially with these
which bothers me.
races.
Grudge guys, stop putting rules on all-wheel drive cars because your rear-wheel drive cars can launch way better.
And everybody gives you the hit already on a DCT car.
I get shit for it all the time because all these grudge racer guys, you guys can bring your cars out, but they have to be on an 18-inch DOT tire. While there's no regulation for the Fox body next to us on a slick, which is just bullshit in my opinion.
And a trans brake.
It's just like if your car can't work on the street, then set it up better. Sorry that the car's worked. It is what it is.
Can you explain to us a little bit on the hit and the DCT and where that limitation lies?
So, I mean,
that is so. Some of it can be, I guess, pointed at software, but usually you got to think the transmission it still has mechanical parts, right? And fluid, it has solenoids, has all this other stuff that has to work together to make the car launch. So when you're on launch control, once you let off, you have to allow, the solenoid has to open up for the fluid passage to let the clutch, build the pressure. And then eventually the clutch has to get past its, slip point and it has to engage. And so there's always, a window of time when that mechanical process is happening. And that's ultimately why the delay is there. A lot of people have tried to fix it, with tuning and some other things, but you'll never get around the real world mechanical delays and systems. And that's all it is. And that's why it's never consistent either. You might have it one time where it's almost a half a damn second, where another time it's a tenth of a second. Like it always is a variable. So like this car, Tyler, he always did the grudge racing on the street with, off a flashlight, which is the worst for these cars. It looks like you're sleeping every damn light, unless you're really good at knowing the future,
lucky.
right?
You just let go of the brake and close your eyes, like whenever you think it's going to happen, and maybe you'll get lucky.
So the DCT cars do have a disadvantage. Drag racing, especially like on a Pro Tree or something like that, or if you get double balled, which is a shitty thing to do, but
with a big turbo car that happened to us at GTR World Cup the first year we unveiled truly.
Okay.
Yeah, we got double bulbed for one of the.
They didn't have a rule implemented on the courtesy staging, so we got double bulbed, and that car has a G42 1450 on it, so it takes a second or two to get up on power. So I almost lost to like a 9-second GTR. It's wild.
I just asked because I'm noticing that in the GT500 with the DCT in it.
Mm-hmm.
I tried to get it nailed down, so we did this power cruise. It's like a roll racing event. We talked about it a little bit before this started. And so under a bridge, there's a cone there, and so you punch it at the cones there. So I was trying to figure out, okay, I need to be a little bit more. I was trying to do it without jumping, and so it was, and it did seem like I couldn't time it out just right. It was very random as to when there was a little bit of a delay.
Yeah, and a lot of things are factors in that. Heat.
Yep.
I mean, I guess you can kind of blame environmental aspects of it too at some point too, but it's just a mechanical thing you're never going to be able to get around.
Yeah. It does once you're up and going, though.
Yeah.
You fly by them
awesome.
a lot of times because it's just seamless.
Yeah.
After that.
Yeah, they're great transmissions, but you're not going to beat a guy on a trans brake auto off the line, no matter what you do. So, especially if it comes strictly down to reaction time, because you're always adding a tenth, 2/10 of a second with a DCT car, no matter what you do. So
you got to make it up on the back as much as
right.
you can.
Yeah,
you got to train, get the train going on the back end. And
Speaking of DCT cars, man, how about those UGR cars that just went? What was it? The R8 did 255 with a DCT into half mile.
that's crazy. And I think we talked about it earlier, but I'll never. I'll get crap for it, but I hate airstrip racing.
I've heard it from quite a bit of people.
Yeah. We've seen it enough times to where like we've seen some people get really, really lucky. I think Giddy in his blue car when we were at AMS went off the track and hit, a small light. It was like this big, right? And almost sent the car toppling over, like bent the wheel in half, broke the suspension. And there's so much stuff like that out on an airstrip. You're talking there's concrete blocks in the grass on some airstrips. There's a little metal sign that's, this big that at 200 miles an hour, a car hits that, and not to mention I think they've gotten better recently, but early on, like we used to do a lot of them when AMS was commissioning Omega. We used to go to a lot of them to where like they would allow spectators, sure they're a few hundred feet off to the side, but they'd allow them almost all the way down half track. And a car going 200 and something miles an hour is going to easily cross that 200-300 foot patch of grass. So I just never had a good taste about that kind of racing.
A lot
it's
of
just,
momentum.
Yeah.
It's very exhilarating going. So I've had mine up north of 180 a little bit, and it is exhilarating. But anything over 150, the smallest dip in the road, there's so many factors that can blow a tire.
Yeah, stupid stuff like a tire blowing or breaking an axle can send your car.
Well, it also comes down to safety for that, because you would think that, okay, let's say you're doing 255, you got a 25.3 or 25.5 cage somehow in your R8, right?
Mm-hmm.
So cool. You think you're safe. You go off track at over 200 miles an hour, you catch an edge and barrel roll. That cage isn't going to, it's not going to matter whether you're caged or not caged. You're scrambled, essentially.
Yeah, you take all of your internals and just mix them all up.
Which it's tough to talk about because we do build cages and things of that nature, but I'm very clear about when we do that stuff to, our customers that like, there's two ways I put it. This is open casket, closed casket at this speed. It's not going to matter. G-forces don't care if you're caged, and it doesn't matter for your head, for your brain. It's, and that's why roll racing, if they were to implement some sort of, a giant barrier on each side, when you're going 255, especially on the big end, where you can't go off and catch an edge of your tires and cartwheel or barrel roll, like that makes it better. Because if you lose control, you hit a wall at 255, right? And the wall kind of, hopefully the whole goal is for it to just keep you in the center of the track, right?
At the very least, keep it contained for spectators and stuff like that too.
So there's
I think that sport's getting to a point to where there's gonna have to be some dedicated tracks built
for them,
half mile,
which would be awesome. I think
for half mile or for roll racing.
For half mile, which also kind of
roll
racing a lot of times done at drag strips, so it's a lot safer, But
that's why TX2K is awesome when they do their roll, because it's on the drag strip. So when you're on the big end, if something happens, there's walls, and we've seen that happen.
There's a sand pit at the end. There's safety guys there. Not that there aren't at the the airstrip events, but I just think it's a lot of times. I know they try their hardest to make it safe and everything. I think a lot of times it's, in my opinion, and I'll get shit for it, but I think it's neglectful to even have people out there doing that speed. I get the appeal to it. I'm sure it's a hell of a lot of fun, but
it's going to get sketchier and sketchier.
Yeah, these cars are crazy.
Cars are fucking nuts, dude. 3,000 horsepower V10s.
Won't find me out there doing it.
Yeah. I mean, it's fun, but it's just dangerous. And I mean, everybody doing it, they know the inherent risks, and that's all that you could do. Like, I respect it.
But you asked about the cars in the shops, and they're awesome cars, super fast cars, talented shops. I have nothing bad to say about any of that. I just don't like that realm of racing.
Yeah.
So you mostly try to stick to quarter where you can.
Quarter mile, yep. Anything that makes sense.
Yeah, we sit down to pee.
Yeah.
Well, it's just safer and cleaner that way, right?
You don't splash or anything like that.
Yeah.
No, but yeah, drag racing is kind of our bread and butter.
Love it.
Love it.
What were you guys doing before AMS?
OnlyFans.
It didn't exist, but actually, did it exist?
I don't know.
It might have in a small.
No, we were only building fans out of my garage.
Yeah.
No, not you meant only fans like the nasty. No, we were building fans, only fans,
Box fans.
box fans.
No, we've always been into cars. We didn't know each other well. We actually grew up in the same town.
It's crazy.
Unbeknownst to us, he actually grew up with my sister. Or went to school with my sister.
Yeah, we partied together.
Yeah. But like before AMS, we really never crossed paths. I grew up loving cars in general. My parents were gracious enough to give me their garage when I was growing up and put their cars outside. So I was a big Honda guy to start, which I think a lot of it's kind of funny. You see T1, you see a lot of other guys stem from Hondas, and it makes sense. Like the Honda guys are really about detail too. Well, there are some Honda guys. Back then, it was always about building a car for a magazine and stuff like that. So we did that. And then I saw a B5 S4 for my first time around when it first came out, and I fell in love with it. I'd always loved Supras, but they were unattainable already at that point. The B5 in my eyes is like, oh, that's kind of like a German Supra, all-wheel drive though, but a twin turbo 6-cylinder.
Now you really have a German Supra nowadays.
Yeah, right. But so I did all that. It was basically a hobby for me. So I built a couple cars, out of my parents' garage, and just ended up loving it. And just did random jobs as you would as a teenager, and managed a couple of AutoZones, grocery store work, stuff like that. But always loved it. Always been into it. So and then worked at my first automotive job was in a body shop called AutoWorks in Northbrook. Shout out to Ron over there. Learned a lot there too. That was fun. He had a cool clientele, so we did a lot of work for like the players on the Bears. Devin Hester would come around all the time, Lance Briggs, stuff like that. So that was cool. So I learned a lot of the high performance stuff there because he allowed me to they'd have Vipers and stuff like that we do headers and intakes and fun stuff on. So I did that for a couple of years, and then my friend Lance started working at AMS, and he's like, "Hey man, I know you like to do this stuff." He's like, "Would you be interested in a job?" I'm like, "Hell yeah, man! Like that's the dream." I grew up watching AMS do their thing with the Evos and the DSMs, and it's always like, these are the guys, those guys are awesome. So I'm like, hell yeah, man, I'm in. So then kind of the rest is history after that. So appreciate him for that. But
That's cool. You?
Yeah, I didn't start off in cars. Not at all.
Oh yeah, this is the story.
Yeah, I mean,
you got a picture you can pull up?
Oh, we're gonna go.
You got to at least touch on that.
All right. Well, touching on it is a loose thing.
You guys won't believe it, but
yeah, no. So obviously through high school and stuff like that, I went to high school with his sister. But
you keep bringing that up.
We didn't know each other at all. We didn't find out. I mean, it's a small world. Like anybody you talk to, anybody you meet, it's just crazy the connections you make. You're like, holy shit! Like it's a very small world. Pretty much after high school, went to college. Got out of college, no jobs available for what I wanted to do in college. So, started dating who's my wife right now. Moved out to Northern Illinois. She went to Northern Illinois University, so we lived in DeKalb. Started working for a AV company as like an install guy for like Dish Network and shit like that. Did that for a while, then got into like custom built home theaters and systems for really high end clientele, and that's what I was doing for a while. It got to a point where I was making super good money doing that. Imagine like millionaire houses, home theaters, audio systems. I had some crazy shit happen in my life that kind of changed my whole perspective on what I want to do with my life. And like, is this awesome? Like, sure, I'm getting paid a lot of money, but it's not fulfilling. So I started welding. I bought a welder, like a TIG welder, shitty TIG welder. And in my basement in my house, just started welding shit together. So just imagine finding whatever kind of scraps of metal, whether they're covered in paint, powder coat, whatever, you just start welding this shit together. Got to a point where I got pretty good. I totally skipped that whole part. So in between from high school, I did a bit of male modeling, which is kind of cool.
A bit. It was pretty serious.
It was kind of serious. I mean, but yeah, it was a good time. So like when I joke around, I said I peaked in.
Were you in Sears catalogs or what?
Oh, he was.
No, not Sears.
Calvin Klein?
I did some stuff for those guys. I did some stuff for some other guys and people. Don't want to get too deep in it, but
We'll send the pictures.
But
I can't wait.
But when I joke around that I kind of peaked in high school, it's 100% positive that I peaked in high school. Like during that time, my junior senior year, I'd be flying out to New York and London and doing runway and doing campaigns and all this stuff. So essentially, it was like I'd work for like beer money, you know what I mean, and stuff like that. So it was really cool. It was a great experience, and we always joke around about that. We send each other pics, and the whole goal for all my friends is to keep trying to, because this is before when the internet was huge and things of that nature. So like there's some really cool pictures out there if you kind of dig deep enough to find of me. But yeah, that's the kind of funny thing about it is because I think that whole experience humbled me out a lot. I got to see a lot of crazy shit, stuff that nobody will ever kind of get to see. But you kind of grow from that, and you're like, holy shit, all right, I've lived some cool stories and some things of that nature. So let's try something else. So male modeling wasn't really my thing. It was fabrication and building race cars. That's what it kind of stemmed into. But all right, so back to the story is essentially I started out of the basement, got a little bit better, and it was one of those things where Gone in 60 Seconds came out, Fast and the Furious came out, and I'm like, yeah, dude, this is cool. So wanted to build a DSM, and I think one of the coolest comments I ever made was Brian Speckner was the reason I bought a DSM, and Paul Walker is the reason that it's built. Right? Because that's essentially like you watch that movie and everybody was like, holy shit, cars are pretty cool. And I was kind of into cars, but not to the level of what I knew. Like you pointed stuff in there and I'm like, I don't know what the fuck that is. Like, the alternator is a turbo. I don't know. End up working for a few companies, some big companies. And then somehow the last company I worked for, we weren't seeing eye to eye. And I was like, screw it. I'm going to go straight to AMS. Cause I used to send AMS a resume like once a month, just trying to bullshit my way in, like fake it till you make it. Like, yeah, I'll do whatever. I do accounting and I'm a fabricator and this and that. And I just showed up with my box in the back of my car, like my actual toolbox that I just quit the other job. And the manager there at the time, I forgot his name. He was awesome. The Silver Fox dude was cool as hell. He interviewed me, and then like 2 days later, he's like, hey, you got a job, come here. And I'm like, holy shit. So then, kind of the rest was history. Started off just doing production work, and then just being a sponge too. Because at that point, I already built my the DSM was like an 8-year project that I started in my garage. So by the time I started with AMS, it was like years. So already I knew shit about cars, but the same thing, just be a sponge and try to be as good as possible at what you do. And during that time is when Instagram started getting big, and like I said, weld porn and all these other kind of welding venues that would take your work and repost it. So whenever you do something cool, and that was the whole goal, was like, dude, I just want to build crazy awesome looking fabrication components and things and take pictures of them. And like it was a high, if weld porn reposted your shit, your phone's going off, you're like, what is happening? And then like it's all like thousands of likes. So then you grow out of that phase too. You start realizing that life isn't about likes, and you got to put food on the table and want to do your own thing too at the same time. So, and then when you have influences like him pushing you for stuff too. I used to ask for, what was it? Just like almost not recognition, but for like acceptance of projects. Mm-hmm. I'd always come up to the guys at AMS and be like, hey, is this okay? I made this. Is this going to be okay for this car? Mm-hmm. And then Ricky would be like,
believe in yourself, man.
Yeah, Ricky would be like, shut the fuck up. Just do it. Don't ask anybody about how, what they think. Just do it how you think. And that, turn the corner with that. And rest is history. We did stuff there for quite a bit of time, had a great time, worked awesome. When we left, we were still close. We were still doing like little projects here and there together. And then,
the race car happened. Kyle, one of our great friends, he had a what was the generation previous to the G80, the F something M3, 6-cylinder turbo, whatever it was. I don't remember.
Yeah, he had one of those. BMW, and we laughed at him.
He's like, yeah, I want to do 1,000+ horsepower with this. We're like, how about no?
No.
I'm like, I had just bought my RS3 at the time. I'm like, this is a much better platform to start with. And I took him out for a ride and let him drive it and stuff. He's like, man, I really love this thing. He's like, you really think we could do it? I'm like, yeah, absolutely, no problem. So sold the M3, bought that car. Actually, we bought a car from New York, went and picked it up. and drove it all the way back. It was a blue one. And then for some reason, like the check from the credit union bounced. So Kyle had to drive it all the way back to New York and give it back to the guy, which was a funny story. But yeah, he bought that car. And then originally it was just going to be a pretty modest build. And then the reason why that car got its name Truly and Kyle got the name Truly is because we were in his garage. The car was on the lift, whatever. And Kyle, you know, he had a couple Trulies in him. And at some point, he's like, man, let's just go crazy with this thing. Let's get the wildest stuff we can on this. We're like, Kyle, are you sure you want to go this route? Like, are you sure 100 times we asked him. It was like a few days of this happening.
100%
we're like, we'll do it, man. But
his drunken state.
Yeah.
Kyle, you want Lexan windows? Yeah, fuck it. Has to do Lexan windows.
That's how that came about. That car should be our fastest car, but we just, like I said, with the customer cars and everything, we just haven't had time to commission it properly. So we're hoping to get it out end of this year, and then a lot more come spring next year. So we're actually going to build it over the winter time and have it ready for the season instead of trying to build it at the beginning of the season. Our whole schedule has kind of gotten flip-flopped just due to the fact that we would do events in Florida in February. We go to DCT World Cup or try to get ready for like Texas 2K. So when your cars are ready for those, then they're usually down during the summertime if something happens, you need to make improvements, whatever.
Yeah.
So our track time up here kind of gets lost when you do those events down there.
Well, not to mention timing. When we finish that car, when we finish all the cars that we used to take to DCT World Cup, that was in February, right? So we're finishing the car first week of February, or end of January, mid of January. Where are we testing when it's 10 degrees outside and there's snow on the ground? So it was kind of fun, and I mean not fun, but it was kind of like one of those butt puckering moments. Is like, we'll get done with Charlie's car, the R8. Cool, we're going. Yeah, let's go. And then like we're testing at the Test and Tune night on Friday in Sarasota at Bradenton. Before brand the day new, before
brand new builds,
brand new builds. This is when we're testing them, So that was the crazy thing about all
we haven't really given ourselves a fair shake with that car over the years. So
no, it was our test bed too. We learned a lot from that car throughout the last 3 years of what we've done. A lot of the products that were on there transferred over to what we sell now. The parachute kit, brakes, suspension, all that thing. Like, they were first tested on that car, and it was only once they did good on that car and we saw the results that we wanted from that is when everything kind of transpired onto the website or onto sales and things of that nature. So now we're going to give that car a fair shake where we're not so under stress
we were always under the gun on that car just to get it done for something or another.
We finished that car in the garage.
The trailer was waiting outside for like 2 hours. Yeah.
And we're still doing the final touches before the first time we came out. And then Fred did that video on 1320. Yeah. That was the first time we ever brought that car out, and on the fourth pass, it ran an 8. So, which was good because it was the fourth pass ever on the car.
That's fairly early on with these cars too. It was what, 2020?
Yeah, 2020. It was right before COVID. So
that's the story with that one.
Are you guys, is there a wait list right now to get a build in here, or?
So for a while, since we only, again, it comes down to controlling what we can is, best for our customers. We only have one guy that we trust with our motors. So for a while there, we were pretty backed up on motors. We're actually right at the front of it now, which is great. But generally, we don't like to keep wait lists. We don't like to take people's money if we're not doing work on their car. We don't like to stack cars here. We don't.
That's a good way to go about it, by the way. I hear all the time people will take money and then all of a sudden, where's the money?
Yeah.
And they get on a backlog and then it just gets messy
we
really quick.
We hate that feeling in general, and we hate having to deal with the possibility of maybe a car gets damaged while it's sitting here for months waiting on a build. We don't like to take, deposits for a build that's going to happen in a year. We'll take a deposit on parts for builds that we know are going to happen. But the way we do it is if someone wants a build, we'll quote them out. If everything's, great, we talk all the details out. We take deposit for parts. If we don't have all the parts here, we're not taking the car in. Yeah. We wait for every single part to get here. I don't care if it comes in 6 months. If it's a small part, we got to wait for that part to come in because we don't know if we're going to be able to get that part in 6 months even. Things change, stuff like that changes.
You only have so much space for storage.
Right. And it doesn't help anyone. It doesn't help us. It doesn't help the customer. It doesn't help, employees. It doesn't help the, just the well-being of anyone mentally either. So we've been in the industry quite a while, and we've kind of seen that at least we think it's not the way to go about it, you know.
No, when you have all that money in your account, especially from something that's going to go down in 6 to 8 months, it's like
it's easy to misallocate that.
Money in, money out.
Yeah.
And then when you're finished with the project at the end of, 8 months or 6 months or however long it took, and it's like, okay, cool. Well, I paid for all that. And you're like, well, oh shit. Now we have nothing to kind of show for it. So it's kind of a mental thing too. And also I feel like, circling back to certain companies and the way they operate is, I've had a lot of customers that were like upfront, like, I'll pay you for the whole thing. Like, here's all the money. I'm like, dude, no, like that's a safeguard for you that when you're satisfied with what we did at the end, you pay us. If there's any problems with it and you already paid us, then what's there to kind of protect you at the end if there is an issue?
Mm-hmm.
And that's, like I said, that's been kind of the shitty thing that a lot of people have experienced and I've seen is they're trying to be awesome and good customers by paying up front, that they're going to get better service, better treatment, where in the end it's an opposite. You pay the dude the money, he grabs the money, uses that money to pay for the other project, and then now when it's time to ordering your parts, he's grabbing a deposit from another one to get your parts. And at the end, if there's any issues, it's like, well, screw you. I already paid you the money. Here's your car back. Sorry.
Yeah. Car sits for 3 months and I catch you guys out on a wave runner on the lake.
Exactly.
Or 2 years in someone's instance.
Yeah.
Or once we get...
The guy takes vacations every other week.
No, once we get wave runners, we won't be here. I'm selling the company.
We've had our fair share of delays, and
absolutely.
To add just 5-6 more cars sitting dead here on top of the delays we have with current projects, just like I said, it never helps anyone.
COVID
didn't affect us till like 2 years, 3 years after.
Till last year. Yeah, COVID, we didn't have a big problem getting turbos, intercoolers, things of that nature until like last year. It was engine components for certain things that delayed our whole engine department.
Yeah, what I think happened is a lot of people saw the effects of COVID up front, and then like the shops that have the cash flow to do it, they, once the parts were available, they just buy all of them, and kind of sit on them because they knew they needed them. Where, small guys like us, we don't have the money to do that, right? So it's one of those things where we kind of just had to wait it out and see, once the companies started getting their stock back up in their warehouses and stuff after all that, that's, so it delayed for us. The engine program was pretty heavily delayed for us for a while. I think the one motor took us like 6 months to get out the door. Wow. from giving it. And that's not to say there was any sort of lagging on the project. It was just the way it was, unfortunately. So it was out of our control.
Coyote World, I think it was last year too. You couldn't get pistons. I think that was one of the biggest things. It was motors were just sitting. Waiting.
And where some shops will just be like, oh, I can't get pistons that we normally use. I'm just going to use these now. We're like all of our, even our stage 1 motors, we use a custom, piston setup. The big power stuff is proprietary to SCG Scott for pistons and rods too. So all the stuff that he does, like, we're not going to stray away from that just to get it out the door faster. Even if a customer's like, hey, I want this fast, I can just do whatever. Like, we're not going to put our name on that, So it's unfortunate with delays, but they do happen. We try to be as honest to our customers as possible about it, and that's all you can do, I guess.
Transparency is key.
What about the 8Ys? Are you guys doing much with that yet?
We'd love to. The tuning solutions aren't there quite yet. Cyvex has a plug-and-play form out now, which we can definitely do that.
That's not cheap exactly, I bet.
Yeah, a lot of people are. I think iRose is doing a whole lot of them now with Cyvex. For us, it's one of those things where it comes a hard sell to, hey, your car's going to have bolt-ons on it, but you need to put a $6,000 ECU on the car, to run it. So we're just going to wait until, we use Unitronic for a lot of our flash tuning stuff, for the bolt-on stuff like that. So we're just going to wait till they have a viable solution, that we know that's ready to go out of the box, and then we'll start pushing that a little bit more. But ultimately, they're pretty much the same car. They changed the rear diff a little bit and obviously some of the styling stuff, but they work, pretty much the same. So,
And then, as we start to sort of wrap up here, what about like when it comes to like development? Are you guys doing any like 3D modeling and like computers or anything for like your parts and stuff?
So yeah, like for example, like our fuel system, the brake stuff, I'll do it all in SolidWorks. we would love to be in a position to have a 3D scanner because we do want to develop like a drag wing for these cars. That's going to be a product that people are going to need eventually.
Is nobody doing that yet?
Not to our knowledge. So we have to outsource like 3D scanning and stuff like that. But as far as like modeling,
We're gonna cut that spoiler stuff out because nobody's doing it. We're gonna we're gonna be the first ones to come out with something that's like an actually molded carbon fiber thing for the RS3 and that.
But everything is done pretty much by hand. I wish we had fancier tools, but I measure everything by hand. I model it all in SolidWorks here. Like the cages he designs on a software called Bentech, right?
Mm-hmm. Here's our 3D modeling right here.
Yeah, so a lot of the stuff takes
lefty
us.
and righty.
Yeah, lefty and righty.
A lot of our stuff takes us a lot longer than some of the bigger shops out there. It just frankly because we're just not there yet as far as our cash flow and what we can afford as far as equipment. So
because at that point you need somebody, you need a dedicated. We can't have him doing tuning, him doing designing, him doing everything. At that point, we would have to buy a ferro arm. We'd have to hire an actual engineer, like somebody to model that stuff, to check it, to verify it with all the different software to see if it's even aerodynamic or if it's going to fit, scan the whole underside of a car. So that all takes time and money, where the big dogs, they have that stuff because they're
20 more years in the business.
Yeah, 20.
But stuff that we really love to do. We love that part of it. We love the design aspect of it. We love seeing, the hundreds of hours of design work coming out and, like our billet parts of our fuel systems and, like the drag brake billet parts, the intercooler end tanks. There's a couple of them over there that we have modeled out of, 3D printing. And that's to me, it's seeing like a project that you worked on come to light in a product form that you can, it's a physical thing you can touch and then sell to someone and they're happy with it. Like that's the most rewarding thing out of it all. So
sweet. And on that note, Dan, do you want to pop the usual 3?
Sure. So at the end of every episode, we like to ask our guest or guests to pick 3 cars. You can pick a track car,
okay,
a daily driver, and a show car. You have an unlimited budget. Swap whatever you want. What are you picking?
Track car as far as
whatever. Pick a track.
Track car's tough.
I don't think it's that tough.
All right, you want to go first then?
Go ahead.
Track car is definitely going to be a GT2 RS.
Are you going road course with it?
Oh, you mean like drag car?
No,
whatever you,
track,
yeah.
Whatever.
Oh, okay, so yeah, GT2 RS for sure. Daily, probably a 2000 or 2001 Honda CR-V with about 300,000 miles on it that I just don't really care about. And then like the nice exotic would be a 458 twin turbo Ferrari.
That's your show car?
That's my show car.
That's an interesting. That'd be a tough one because there's only a handful of twin turbo 458s in existence.
Yeah,
because it's not normal.
No, it's not at all. There was a couple people building them for a while, but I don't know if it ever tracked well.
Yeah,
they do.
For
nice.
me, track car is a tough one because I've always loved the whole like I'd have to go with like a Fox body just because it's just so much fun and easy to work with. There's parts everywhere for them. I'd have to do that just to have fun with it. It's something I'd want to enjoy.
It's like a drag car.
Yeah, drag car, something like that. So daily driver, I'd have to do one of our builds in like a TTRS and RS3 because it's hands down like one of the better cars you can get on the road. There's not much you're not going to come across much that's going to beat you, and it drives really nice. So
which one is it, RS3 or TTRS?
RS3.
Okay.
I can throw shit in the back seat, easily tote around some stuff. And then show car, I'd have to go back to the old like hot import night days and do like a 2000 Honda Civic, just make it super period correct, I guess.
Clear taillights.
Yeah, clear taillights, big body kit. Like I have to go back to that, so that'd be fun.
SSR wheels.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my God, yeah.
Sweet. And then where can everybody find you guys?
RadaRaceLab.com, Instagram, Rada Race Lab, Facebook, Rada Race Lab, TikTok. We have TikTok still.
Yeah, we got TikTok.
It's not much on it, but
yeah.
Best way to get at us, since we're only 4 guys here, is email. We're really responsive with email.
And we only do email. We prefer email because we feel like that's the way better kind of track for tracking communication.
Yeah.
Paper trail.
Yes.
There's no unsend.
Right.
Yeah. So we could. Well, there is.
Within the first 5 seconds.
Yeah.
Just to make sure we don't miss anything too in the conversation, because and I like to say and bring this up to people watching and people dealing with companies, like Messenger is awesome, right? Messenger is great for contacting people, but when you're constantly talking about a project or trying to keep track of stuff, and especially if there's a lot of people doing the same thing, for a company like us, when we have like 30 people trying to contact us and ask us questions and stuff on Messenger, it gets so hard and diluted to keep track of everything and make sure that, like, you know, we take care of our customers properly with that kind of thing. So we always ask everybody to, you know, shoot us an email. And if it gets, you know, crazy enough where you need to speak to this nerd or me, then, you know, we're always there on the phone. So
Absolutely.
Sweet. Dan?
You can find us at Gunna Garage with 2 N's.
And if you guys made it this far into the episode, please be sure to share the show if you like these guys. I don't know if you made it this far. I'm sure you do. And yeah, thanks, Dan. Thanks for existing, and we'll see y'all next time.
Thank you, guys.
thank you.